Where is
He'll come.
I think it's gone.
Yeah.
Oh!
Get out of our sector! You're not Oxford, Tim. Out! You're in our sector. This is not your sector.
Hi, Gary. So we're here in Oxford, 18th of February, about the 15-minute city thing. Why do you think this is so important to be here today?
Well, I think our freedoms are fundamentally important to everybody. Yeah, and when you start dividing people up with making zones of a city, and then saying that you can't travel between those, that it totally interferes with our freedom of movement. Yeah, and we do not subscribe to that in any way. I do not subscribe to it, and I should imagine anybody in their right mind would not subscribe to being locked down to a zone. So that's my opinion on it, and I'm sticking with it.
Hi, we're here in Oxford today. Why are you here, and why do you think it's important to be here?
I think it's important because they're trying to impose restrictions on the cities. Even though I'm not from Oxford, I'm from Northampton, I'm worried about it spreading across the country and restricting our daily movements and livelihoods for something that we're not even asking for or being consulted on.
So the people might say in response, what's the problem? Only, because you're going to get 100 days a year where you can travel out of your zone. What's the problem with that? What do you say to that?
Well, I say it's nowhere near enough. If you're running a small business or you're taking the children to various schools and clubs, you're off to even church or wherever you may be going. I don't think it's enough. It's nowhere near enough, and there shouldn't be a limit. I don't think there should be a limit. You should keep it the way it is. I don't think there's anything wrong with the climate, which may be one of the reasons they're saying about it. The climate just goes through cycles. There's no change. I just think it's imposing restrictions are totally unnecessary.
When society is dominated by the fearful, and if any step we take in the other direction, we take a step towards control.
It's well out of order, sort of trying to restrict you where you can and can't go.
Absolutely. So as George Orwell said, George Orwell's 1984, dystopian future, and we're heading right at it.
Yeah.
We're literally over the tipping point.
That's it, yeah. That's it. Yeah, and you've got the little one there as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
And the thing is, someone like my age, if all this draconian stuff comes in, I probably haven't got too long to put up with it, but your son, he's got his whole life in front of him.
Yeah, of course. That's why it's important.
But I didn't have kids and then have grandkids for them to become prisoners in this country, and that's what they're going to become. That's the future they're looking at in prison.
Digital slavery and
We're here from Corby.
All right.
Corby, Northamptonshire. Said we stand with the people against tyranny.
Yeah.
Those who wish to control and... Yeah,
really?
I'm a postman. I'm a postie.
1,000. Is that the Light? Is it?
Hey?
Is that the Light newspaper?
The Light newspaper.
You've got 1,000 of those
since
out.
Since last March.
Blimey, that is.
I'm on number 12 issue coming up for me.
That is really.
That's been going for 2 and a bit years, so it's brilliant. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
very little pushback.
Well, that's really good that you're doing that.
102C, I don't want that. Not a problem. I'm not pushing anything on anybody. I'm just trying to open them up. Say, have a look at this. You're only looking at one hand. Look at that other one.
Yeah.
It's got all the facts and figures, and just wake up and ask yourself some questions.
I felt I had to come up here today simply because there's so much going on. We're having so many of our freedoms, liberties eroded from us. During the pandemic was obviously the worst case. Now they just seem to be coming at us from another angle. It seems to be relentless. Speaking to people on the street, they just say to me, what's coming next? I think you just have to stand up and just show the authorities that you're not going to put up with it. You're not going to take it. And that they've got to reassess the situation and turn things around. I mean, we didn't vote for any of this, none of it. Put it to a vote. Let's see if people really want this, shall we?
Well, apparently in this town, they had a consultation about the 15-minute city here in Oxford, and was it about 90% of people said no on the consultation, but they're going ahead with it anyway. And I don't think that's democratic. What do you think about that?
Well, it speaks for itself, doesn't it? I just think that kind of decision is going to make people just think, well, they're going to do it anyway, so I'm not even going to bother to object. Until, of course, it affects you directly. One day you won't be able to drive to go and see your child or your family, or go and look at a property, or what's next after this? Where does it lead to? It's a slippery slope. So I just think you have to stand up and point these things out. We didn't vote for it. Nobody wants it. The consultation says so. So why are they implementing it with our money, our taxpayers' money? Why are they doing it?
If you want to say a few words to the channel.
Right, yes, hello, Fair Play now. I'm pleased to meet you, yeah. All my life I've lived as a free man, been able to drive wherever I want within the law, and now we're being told when we can, when we can't drive, where we can and can't go, what we can and can't do, can and can't think.
Okay, what brings you here today?
Well, we see the imposition of LTNs and the ultra-low emission zones and the 15-minute cities as being an assault on our freedoms that's done under the guise of caring for the environment.
And what do you say to people who say kind of things, well, what's the problem with a 15-minute city? It might be quite a good thing to have all you need near to you and not have to travel so far.
Well, if you want everything you need near to you, people should invest in, or the councils or whoever could invest in making that available to people, providing amenities in local areas. You don't need to stop people driving for that. The given motive for them is to avoid pollution, isn't it? And for environmental concerns. And yet the people imposing them, they're on private jets, they're on yachts, they don't seem to care about the pollution caused by the military, which is one of the biggest polluters. We just don't believe that they have our best interests at heart. I would like to say that I understand that people think this is crazy. They think there's a climate emergency, and they think that we should embrace these restrictions on ourselves. But I don't see it the same way. I think we are conditioned to believe certain narratives because they can be used to restrict our freedoms. And I think that we need to say that once you lose your car, or your right to use your car, and it's limited, say in Oxford for example, it's 100 journeys per household per year through the low traffic neighbourhoods. Once they've set a limit on it, they can reduce that limit until your car is not economical to retain it. Then you're limited to about 3 miles an hour that you can walk, and they have more control over you. You're limited to public transport, which they can reduce or increase at their will. So I think people need to understand that this is the thin end of a wedge. This is the first step of removing your freedom of movement and giving greater control of your freedom of movement to the state.
Yeah, because I think personally that they'll start off with cars, but they might even start limiting you how far you can go and what you can do, even if you're walking or cycling as well.
Well, that's the great concern, because we see with all these restrictions that we've suffered over the past 3 years, that China seems to be the model. And already in China you have these zones where people live in a checkpoint society. So what happens when you reduce people's ability to use their cars is that you have to introduce a checkpoint of some kind. You have to introduce surveillance. So then we're going to have greater amounts of surveillance. And once you introduce the principle that you can be surveilled to leave your given 15-minute area, you can apply it to pedestrians as well. Why not? Maybe their carbon footprint is too big, and they're going to buy something, or they're going to the seaside, and maybe that mankind is polluting the countryside, or they can apply that environmental argument to pedestrians eventually, because they, as we've seen over the past 3 years, they think we're a virus or a plague on the earth. That's the way they want us to think of ourselves, and I don't believe that. I think people need to realise that the environmental issue, where it comes from, it's not. It comes from co-opted science. We've seen, hopefully people have seen, not everybody's seen this yet, but that the science was co-opted and propagandized and censored over the past 3 years. Now the same goes for the environmental concerns that people have, the climate change issue, and the idea that man-made climate change is a problem. People have to realise that carbon dioxide constitutes a very small part of the atmosphere, 0.04%, of which man contributes only 0.4%. It's tiny. And carbon dioxide also is plant food, so more of it can actually be beneficial. We're actually living in an age where we've actually got quite low carbon dioxide, and the Earth has sustained life for millennia with more. So what you've been told is not necessarily true. The scientists who think otherwise are not in your mainstream news outlets, and that's what people need to realise. So we need to open up the conversation about that and look at other alternatives to make our. If we really wanted to make the streets cleaner, we could introduce different technologies into the cars. Okay, we don't need to limit our movement to do that.
Yeah, apparently, so I've heard, is a lot of scientists who don't believe in the whole climate thing are actually being censored and shut down. They're not just, their opinions aren't being heard.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a famous example. We all know about people of my generation, probably your generation, know about David Bellamy, whose career was kind of sort of ended on the BBC and on the mainstream channels because he talked about this and he had expressed a different opinion. We've seen how, as I said before, we've seen over the past few years how science is completely controlled and co-opted, and alternative views are not permitted. That we get fed this line that 97% of scientists agree about climate, but it's not true. People have done studies on those claims and found that the very, very few of them actually attribute climate change to man's activities on the Earth.
It's a great conspiracy. Well, if you look at it, it's an open conspiracy because you've got organisations like the C40 and the global covenant of mayors. Everything you need within 15 minutes of your doorstep. You know.
Surprised to become king himself. He thought he would be.
Yeah. Keep the faith. Thank you. Okay, hello. We're here in Oxford today. What brings you here, and why do you think it's important to be here today?
Because the council have gone against the people's wishes. People here don't want to be locked up in little areas. They don't want to be going back to Warsaw, like after the war, or in the war, when all the poor Jewish people were locked in ghettos. It's going to be just like a Warsaw ghetto. Why should they? They should be able to go wherever they want to. It's a free country. They pretend it's something to do with global warming, which doesn't exist. And they pretend it's part of the net zero, which is ridiculous. And I think they should all go back to school and find out what carbon is, because we all need carbon. We all need the trees to grow and the plants to grow. We can't get rid of it. We need to have more of it.
And what would you say to people who would say, what's the big deal with being restricted to a 15-minute city?
Because it's just like income tax. They'll start off saying, oh, it's just a temporary thing. Then suddenly it will be a permanent thing, and it will be not 100 days that you have to go out and come back. They'll change it. Oh, it's going to be 50 days now. Then it will be 10 days. Then it will be, sorry, you can't leave at all, not unless you get special permission.
I think you just described exactly how totalitarianism works.
Exactly, that's what it is. It's just communism. And just look at China, the poor people in China. They can't do anything without their special gadgets.
Yeah, nice talking to you.
it's important because they're trying to bring in these 15-minute neighbourhoods, which are going to trap people in their places, and people are not going to be able to move around and drive their cars around freely like they were before. You know, we should continue to have the freedoms that we've always had, and people are standing up and standing against that today. So we're really happy to support everyone who's here.
Give us a smile, Kev.
Oh, there he is. I knew I'd see you. I'm no stranger, Tim, to protests. I've been on quite a few in London, and I'm still trying to get my head around this 15-minute city thing because it's so crazy and so mad, and so I've come here to learn more today. So although I'm awake on the 15-minute city thing, I'm still trying to get my head around it because it's just so bonkers and so extreme, and you can't believe it's happening. But this is reality. Well, we're going to make sure it's not reality, and we're going to be successful. I come from a journalism background, well, mainly mainstream, but I haven't done any journalism as such. I haven't been doing any for the last 18 months. So.
Who did you work for?
I was UK Talk Radio for 9 years, but there was no politics and no COVID on that station, so it's kind of safe. But and I was in local television for 2.5 years. I had a panel talk show, again fairly mainstream, but we were free. It was fairly free, you know. People could be themselves. And
yeah, given your profession and background, I've got a question for you. Why do you think it is? There's so many important things going on, but they don't seem to be reported on by the mainstream media very much. Why do you think that is?
This is a really, really weird thing, and you know, if you'd have asked me that question 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been really aware of the reality of it, but it is a reality. And it really is shocking, because I think I read a phrase earlier, why isn't the news on the news? Oh, is that a real £20? No.
No, that's a good one.
Oh,
yeah,
I love it. Yeah, keep cash alive.
Keep cash alive. That's one thing that's very important.
And I think, Tim, you know, with the cash thing, I just think even if you take all the so-called conspiracy theories out of it and all the big sinister stuff, any business that's refusing or turning down paying customers cash, well, that's just rude. Yeah, lots of.
That's Klaus.
He's the main conspirator.
Yeah, he is.
We won't be able to grow vegetables anymore. Couple that up with the 15-minute cities where you need a passport to go to the toilet, and what's the bloody point? Resist! Comply! Do not comply!
Hello. We're in Oxford today. Why is it important to be here today? And
well, it's important to unite all these actions against zone controls, whether they're smart cities with their 15-minute zoning, or low traffic neighbourhoods, or the so-called clean air zones. They're all about control, taking money from you, and brainwashing people into believing the climate con. And the climate con has been used for everything, including digital ID, and that is really dangerous. So it's important that people unite all the different actions around the country, and that's why we're here.
Thank you very much.
It's not really an efficient way to climate change. I believe in climate change, but causing more congestion on our streets is going to cause a lot more pollution. It is already. So it's a completely misconceived initiative. I think you need to free up traffic, let the cars flow through, and that'll get rid of all the congestion and the pollution. That's a better way.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
But
So why do you think it's important to push back against the whole 15-minute city thing? If anyone's watching this who thinks they're a good idea, why would you say they're not such a good idea?
well, they're not a good idea because they're going to. It's basically building a kind of a prison, an open-air prison for you, and it means that they want to. They'll sell it on the idea that we're doing it for the environment, we're doing it for good causes, but actually it's all about control. So this is why we have to get this out there. I mean, it's massively important, right?
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and a pleasure to meet you.
You too. Cheers.
Thank you.
And what's your channel called?
It's Bosch Haveit, BOSHAVEIT.
That's great. Subscribe to that, guys.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Right, look who I've come across here. It's Lee from the Veritas Vintage channel. If you don't know him, it's a great channel to subscribe to. And Lee, tell us why you're here today and why you think it's important to be here today.
It's the thin end of the wedge. It's not really about 15-minute cities. In my opinion, it's about, if they get away with this, where it's going to lead to. And it will be, as carries on from the last 3 years, a restriction of freedoms, and this is like through the back door. And as one of the speakers said, they've chosen this as a pilot because this particular city, it does follow the system quite a bit, and if they get away with it here, they're going to get away with it elsewhere. I mean, they've already installed the infrastructure at over 100 councils around the country, so it's just a worry. It's as if like them sneaking it in. This is not the way. This is not the way we should live. That's my opinion. As far as the environment's concerned, we all have got a responsibility not to pollute and not to waste natural resources and things like this. But this isn't about that. This is nothing about the environment. It's all about another way to bring control in, and that's my firm belief.
Yeah, mine too. Yeah. So, what would you say to people who would say to you, well, I don't think there's too much problem with a 15-minute city. What's the problem with having all your facilities so close to you? What do you say to those sort of people, those sort of objections?
Well, again, it's the thin end of the wedge. I mean, it's dressed up nice, it sounds good, and ostensibly nobody can really object, but this is not what it's about. It's a foot in the door. It's what it's going to lead to. I think our government and other governments, I keep saying this, they've seen China and they're using this as a model, and we won't end up like China overnight, but that's the direction it's going. So 15-minute cities today, climate lockdown tomorrow, you won't be able to do anything. It's just one more step to tyranny, and I don't think that's being too dramatic. I think that's actually what's happening. I really do, based on what I've seen.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. So I think we'll leave it there. And if you don't know, what's your channel, Lee, on YouTube?
Veritas Vincit.
And I highly recommend it.
Good.
Thank you. There's a taxi there, so obviously his living's going to be affected by all this 15-minute nonsense. Yeah. Which is why he's hooting so a lot there.
I don't like the offices that you're off. I want you to take a natural process. If you're recommended, it must be safe. So it's okay.
Well, it's important to come to a city such as this, because obviously it's an experimental about the 15-minute travel restrictions, and I just wanted to speak to the locals, the shopkeepers, bar owners, just ask them what sort of an impact they envisage it's going to be, and also they're rolling it out for the rest of the rest of us, the rest of the UK. So we need to just stand up and do something about it, and hopefully we can speak to people who are unaware of it. And so it's great to meet you. So end of.
So you're from Manchester, aren't you?
A place called Macclesfield.
Macclesfield, yeah.
Macclesfield,
so you've done very well to come down here. You're obviously very passionate about this.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
we're in Oxford at the end of the march, just relaxing in a pub now. So why did he come to Oxford today, and why do you think it's important to come today?
I think it's so important, basically, because we have a right to be able to go where we want to go, when we want to go, and whatever time. And there should be no limit on that distance, or where we go, or why we want to go, as long as it's legal. You know, it's just taking away all of our freedoms, all of our rights. You know, it's bad enough. I mean, I haven't been anywhere nearly for 3 years, and what they're looking at is making it for the rest of my life. And I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for other people's children either.
And what do you say to people who would say, well, you know, 15-minute cities to save the environment might be a good thing?
I think the environment is quite fine. I think it's all a lie, it's all a hoax, and that isn't the overall aim. The overall aim is just to control you and keep you where you are, so they know where you are all the time. It's nothing to do with the environment. I mean, they're saying about electric cars, yeah, it makes more carbon to actually make the batteries for electric cars, let alone what happens to the young kids in third world countries that are mining for the materials. So it's actually more, you know, it's just all a load of BS, I'm sorry to say, but that's what I really think, it's just a load of BS.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah, Bucko, mighty Bucko, hello. And cheers.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's nice to sit and rest the weary bones. It's mega important. I think it's more important. Well, no. Yes, it's more important than all the demos. They were all significant and important in what they were getting across, whether it was against having this or the lockdowns or various things. But this must be stopped in its rollout, because I've said on things I've videoed today, it will be like a cancerous tumour that will infect all the towns and cities. What are your thoughts, Tim? How your overall feelings of the day?
Well, I think it's been good turnout, and very important, like you say, to do this, because otherwise, if we let them get away with this, it's going to be thin end of the wedge stuff.
That's it. I wanted to be at this one for my own peace of conscience, to be at the first protest of the 15-minute cities. It was important to be here. Now, whether how often this type of demo will come about to Oxford, I don't know. Whether will they do other ones? I assume they will. And possibly it will spark interest to take it to their own locations, to do smaller demos in their own towns.
Yeah, even if it's turning up at your local town hall when they're having their meeting, to go into the public gallery with the placards like they did in Colchester, I think it was. Even stuff like that is valuable.
And you've had a few people greeting you. It's always nice for people to come up who value what we're doing. Sometimes we think, do people care? Sometimes we get a bit down or under the weather. But these kindly people, it's a joy to meet and to put a face to them, particularly when it's some of your own people who view regularly. It's great. It lifts you.